Despite the growing conflict, Mozilla state of the board has did lab exercise stock opinions and encourage some of the company reached dividends. His son Mark began working there in 1996, and when Mozilla finally left the board after Countrywide bought a bank, it was because he had no choice. IndyMac also owned a bank, and bank regulation don't allow anyone to serve as a director on two bank holding company boards. When Mozilla stepped down from the board, IndyMac forgave an outstanding $3.3 million loan and paid him another $3.6 million to cover any takes he might out of his stock options. Taking the money was a outrageous move, and some at Countrywide think that money was starting to matter too much to Mozilla. He owned 2.8 million shares of Countrywide stock, including option, and will take home $6.6 million in compensation, a number that will rise to $10.1 million and $23.6 million. Yet he wanted more. There, there are CEOs of companies to whom the most important thing is if they made more than the next guy, says someone who knew him well. Mozilla was getting caught up in all of that. If Stan Kurland was in charge of Countrywide's plumbing, a very different kind of executive was in charge of producing all of its lands. His name was David Samble. He had joined Countrywide in 1985 and become its head of land production. He was named Chief Operating Officer for the Home Loan Division. Like Colonel, Samble had gone to California State University Notre Dame and had worked briefly as an accountant. For many years, the two men operated to be friendly. They were both highly intelligent, brown men who cared deeply about Countrywide's standing and its market share goals. About Sample, a former executive size, he bled Countrywide, but there the similarities ended. Sample was a super aggressive salesman, very much in the Mozilla mode, thought he lacked Mozilla's charm and warmth. He did not always make a good first impression. His style was one of attack, says a former executive. He would attack everything around him that didn't report to him. He would be relentless and very convincing until you changed him with facts. But when you called him out, it never bothered him. It rolled well right off his bank, and he was on to the next thing. This aspect of Samble's character gives rise to an internal nickname, Teflon Dave. Another former executive who was a fan of Samble says he loved these details. He loved knowing the details, and he loved putting people through the grinder to see if they knew the details.